welcome back to another episode of the Empowered Intuitive Academy podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Tay Henderson, and with me is my beautiful co-host, Petra Costa. And you can find us at the Empowered Intuitive Academy on Instagram and Facebook. And hopefully you're watching this on YouTube or listening in on Spotify. Do that while you're driving. We're pretty entertaining. Today we are chatting about a really cool urban folklore phenomena, the black-eyed children. Black-eyed children.
I tried to say that scary. Black-eyed children.
Black-eyed children. Don't let
What are these contemporary legends? What are these black-eyed children? Where have they come from, Tay?
They're a pretty recent development in regards to like folklore and urban legend. The first recorded case of black-eyed children actually happened in where are my notes? 1998. Brian, a reporter, was parked in the car park of a cinema, and his car was approached by two hooded children who wanted him to give them a lift home after seeing a movie, supposedly. But he didn't feel comfortable. He was already getting an off vibe, and he was like, maybe you should, try and get into contact with your mother. And the more he refused, the more they insisted, and they were getting angrily. And it wasn't until one of them looked up and he noticed that it had blacked out eyes, like the whole eye was black, that he realized something was wrong.
Like X-Files kind of eyes.
Yeah, literally like possessed demon child shit. So he starts to drive off, and they start like angrily banging at the window, being like, fucking let us in, we need a lift, you gotta let us in. Like they need that permission. And since then, he supposedly told a bunch of people by email went viral, it went all over the internet, and then was just flooded with additional stories of where other people had also experienced these black-eyed children. So I mean, I was born in 1996, and that story was out in 1998.
It doesn't seem to be losing its legs
in
terms of going around. And so let's re-clarify. Black-eyed children are usually children. They look like normal human children. They can have paler skin. They are aged somewhere between 6 and 16. They often appear in pairs.
Yes.
And their eyes are completely black. Now, there is a disparity in how people report it as to whether they are pure black, glassy eyes like a shark, people have described them, or some people have described them as being ripped out, so they're just blackened holes.
Sockets, where
their eyes are supposed to be.
Yeah.
And in every instance of these reported little people coming up, they insistently want to come with you or be led into your home. So he was approached at his car, but other people have had them knock on the door, and there's like a knock on the door at night, and you open the door, and I read some reports that some people feel almost protective towards the younger one out of them, but really threatened and uncomfortable and uneasy. It's like every one of our spider senses are going off saying these are not what they appear to be, even before, because they can try to keep their eyes hidden. So they can have hair hanging down over their face, or they can wear a hood, like you were saying. I've heard some instances where they've said to be having glasses on, so they'll have sunglasses on, and it's only when they either look up at you, you'll notice the eyes. But before that, you get this really unsettled feeling that something's not right here. Something's not right.
And it almost reminds me of like Supernatural, when their eyes flick over black and you're like, yeah, they're possessed, like it's the first indicator. It's always the eyes.
It's creepy, because although when I was doing the research for this, and there's not much research to do, to be honest, when they're talking about it, they're linking it to mythological things through folklore and tales. And although there are children that come up in, more ancient mythology, black-eyed children in the same way, not so much. that I could find. I could find, instances, but not direct correlations where you could say, well, historically this comes from the legend of this.
Yeah.
You can see that it's just morphed.
It's like another evolved variation of monstrous children.
Just monstrous.
Yeah.
And they're scary because they're children. And we
Yes.
have had through mythology before where an evil entity or a malevolent entity will present itself in a way that is trying to put you off guard, because obviously if a small child comes to you, you're going to let it closer than
Yes.
you would if it was this big hulking figure. You're going to let it get that little bit closer. But
Exactly.
what?
It's almost a trickster energy about it. And I was listening to like a PBS podcast on why people find black-eyed children so creepy. And one, it's our wariness towards unnatural gazes. Because
Mhm.
we do a lot of body scanning, of particularly the eyes, about reading about the nature of the person in front of us, right?
Yeah, then the eyes are the window to the soul.
Yes. Intergenerational conflict. So how we treat our children, how we see
Okay.
our children, malevolent children in pop culture. So there's lots of instances where we've got children that are just inherently born evil, or they're influenced by external evil forces, like Children of the Corn and all that shit.
Yes. Oh my goodness,
Yes.
Malachi scared the crap out of me in Children of the.
Watch the movies. I loved Children of the Corn. Um,
Oh,
in the internet sensationalism of these appearances, and the spread of the myth, and it made a point of how, back in way when it would take eons for myths and legends to form and evolve, but with the internet, with the access we have now, it's in seconds. And then
yeah. And that Slender Man is the perfect example of how it can just go.
yes, and it just snowballs. And then lastly, a perversion of our biological programming to care for children, to care
Yeah.
for our young. And I definitely
Yeah.
feel that, because if I, if I saw a child at my front door and they asked to come in,
Your barriers would be down. Your
yeah,
instinct is to
exactly.
your
Being a
instinct,
mother,
even though your
yeah,
spidey senses might be saying, oh, this is not what it appears to be.
yeah,
You've
yeah.
still got that programming in you that goes, I've got to protect this child.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100%. And that's why I think it comes across that little bit more creepy, because we are being used and manipulated really badly in the instance of these black-eyed children. The question is, what do they want? Now, what I found intriguing was they seem to require permission to enter, which
Yes,
makes you instantly think, obviously, vampires. Everyone goes with vampire, mythology, that they've got to be asked to pass the threshold and blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
But then obviously it also comes back when I Googled it, because I was just curious, and I was like, oh, okay, what other entities require permission to enter? And I got inundated with religious websites in relation to demons. So the demons and Lucifer and all of everything related to the devil,
yeah,
apparently there's quite defined rules of conduct.
yeah.
So I find that interesting that when even to incorporate that mythology, that they require this permission. Is that Vampire Diaries at the top?
Yeah, literally. Yep, yep. The
Like,
Vampire Diaries. Even the salt barriers across doorways in Supernatural for the demons and stuff like that. Like, I think of that sort of thing.
it's got that vibe. Now, apparently, when these children, if they come to you near your home, or when they appear, there can be the standard kind of symbols of demonic, presence, with the flickers of light, having a little bit of a um, and blah blah blah. I heard one person relaying the story of the black-eyed children in. So if you went to your home,
Yeah,
and they were relaying the story that the husband, the wife had gone into the kitchen to make some cocoa, and the husband was sitting the children in the lounge room trying to find an image of where the books were, and they were giving responses like they'll be here soon, and they're coming, where are, and diffuse to keep people just settled, as if there was like a time involved in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So they holding and in back with the hot cocoa, his nose is bleeding, he's got a headache, and apparently later he was diagnosed with it. So, and the skin cancer is considered radiation.
Yeah.
So
yes, I read that too, that some other woman had a similar experience where it was like she was exposed to a massive dose of radiation and ended up with like random cancers and stuff like that after interacting with these children. I'm like, that is bizarre.
And this is where I'm getting a bit confused. I don't think historically there's any precedent for causing reactions. I think radiation sickness is more something we associate with aliens and alien exposure than we do with demonology. You've got this rule.
I mean, unless these kids come from like friggin' Chernobyl or Fukushima.
And so that's why I'm like, it's an interesting merge because it's got aspects that would lead you to believe alien.
Yeah.
Then you've got aspects of demonology around rules of entry.
Yeah.
And then I'm just like going, it's just an interesting mix. So I'm curious. I don't want to meet one.
There's also
I'm happy not to meet one.
Yes, yeah. There's also spirit like stuff in there as well, like ghost stuff. There was a paranormal investigator in the UK named Lee Brickley, and he became obsessed with studying and hunting down black-eyed children after having an experience with a young black-eyed girl in Kynoch Chase Forest. And he ultimately linked this spirit or this black-eyed child to one of the 3 school-age girls that were murdered in the Kynoch Chase Forest, and that happened in Staffordshire, Kynoch Chase. I'm trying to find the year. I think it was the 60s.
Well, that actually comes back to, because obviously flickering lights and electrical disturbances are linked with ghosts and hauntings. So
and so he was hunting around for more information and for people who had also sighted these black-eyed children, and he got inundated with like so many responses as to like people having these experiences with black-eyed children, and they're not limited to like a certain geography or anything like that. Like they're popping up in forests,
just popping up
in
everywhere,
abandoned buildings, in urban neighborhoods. Like, I mean, I feel
and I was, what creeped me out a little bit, apart from all of the stuff that's creeping you out, is that I got information that they can track you, so that they might first appear to you in a certain place that it has no connection to you or your home, and now they can track you through your home. And there was references that they can track you through your mobile as well. And I'm thinking, well, that means, are they contacting you? Like, do they ring you and do they say, let us in?
Phone, G?
Let us in. And I'm just like, anything that wants me to let it in, I'm like, no, you can stay there.
Stay there.
You can stay outside.
Yeah. But it was funny because in this research I come across a condition that you can have that might explain the black eyes, and it's called aniridia, and it pretty much means to cut out the iris completely. So in this condition, this is a rare congenital condition, happens in 1 in 50,000 newborns, or can be, induced through complications of eye surgery or trauma. But pretty much the iris of your eyes, my eyes aren't a good example because they're very dark brown, but the iris of your eyes gets blocked out completely or partially by your pupil tissue. Your iris tissue does not form properly or is damaged, and it makes your whole iris look black. The funny thing, and this has some serious consequences too, it can give you higher risk of cataracts.
I was going to say, because you can't control the amount of light coming through your eye.
So they become photosensitive. They have impaired vision. And also it can increase retinal problems issues with your cornea, nystagmus. So it's not actually, just being cool and having like a black contact in.
It's actually a serious
Might
condition.
explain the glasses and the hoodies and stuff like that, but with the condition, it doesn't affect the whites of your eyes. So
Okay, so we've got no science that can
there's
explain
no
it.
science to explain why the whole of the eye would be blacked out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a symbol. Obviously, looking at eyes, windows to the soul. Whenever you watch, whether it's Supernatural or Vampire Diaries or whatever it is you're, um, looking at, the eye going all of a sudden black or red, and it's always the whole of the eye. It's never just that is a symbol of things aren't right.
And yeah, a symbol of like an absence of humanity or an
Exactly.
absence
Something that used to be there isn't there anymore, especially if you see the change occur.
exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, so black-eyed children are freaky as, but I was thinking to myself, these haven't been around long enough to have freaked me out this much. And I was trying to rack my brain for memories that I had of scared children, right? There's been a whole heap of them. I remembered I remembered I read a book once. I cannot remember it, but it was basically on the premise that when Nazi Germany engineered the race, they had invented the concept of in vitro fertilization, and they would do the whole trying to produce the master race, like engineering. What is it called? Eugenetics.
Yeah, eugenics.
That's close enough.
Eugenics.
They were doing that, and then what had happened years and years later, they uncovered these vials and they used it in a practice inseminating couldn't have any children. They thought they were having their own children put in them, but they weren't because they were using this old DNA, and they were putting it into people, and it produced scary blonde hair, blue-eyed, creatures that had no empathy but were perfect in every way. And I remember reading that book and that freaking me out. And then I thought, but no, I've got
freaky.
He's freaky. I can't remember what it was called. My nan gave it to me to read. She read
Oh, you
uh,
nan.
Nan read the most whack stuff. Like
you to read before bed.
Anyway, but then I remembered you've got the whole mythology of the cuckoo, changeling myths like we've got in nature where there are birds that knock the egg out of the nest and lay its egg. Some fiction stories that we had written around, and that was written, later back, 97.
Yeah.
Wynnum wrote that, and he was also the guy who wrote Dave the Triffids. You might not remember with Cuckoos, but Dave the Triffids, which was then turned into a movie called Village of the Damned.
Yeah.
And it was freaky. And if you Google Village of the Damned and you see the kids standing there, you really get black-eyed children vibes.
Yeah.
So they were blonde hair, they had a stony, soulless face.
Yeah.
They had normal eyes, but their iris configuration was gold.
Yeah.
And they had telekinetic powers, they had telepathy.
Yes. And that was another thing that kept popping up, like researching them, is that often the children come in pairs, right? And they don't talk unless they're talking to you.
Yes.
But they're often like looking at each other and like they know what's
as if they're communicating, like there's a whole dialogue going on that you're not privy to.
Yeah.
Well, exactly. And that's what happened in this Village of the Damned. And so basically the story goes around, there is a slight variation between the book and the movie, but effectively there's a blackout. Everybody in the town goes to sleep, including all of the animals. They wake up, say, 6 hours later, and women are then pregnant. They find out a month later that they're pregnant. A whole bunch of them are pregnant.
That's
and some of them, one's a virgin, one, her husband's away, one, other load of them don't have any explanation. All of these children get born on the same day, so they gestate for exactly the same period of time. And then when they're all born, there's 10 and 10. So there's 10 male and 10 female. And as they grow up, they're paired. So they have their paired person that they're supposed to then marry and produce with out of these damned children. They have no empathy. They have powers, and they literally try to just run the show with, and they're just scary ass. And I remember seeing that, and I'm thinking, okay, similar in the fact that they have pale skin.
Yeah.
These ones have white blonde hair, which brings me back to the whole,
Nazi. Yeah.
other Nazi book that I read, and
Yeah.
they have cobalt eyes. Are fiercely intelligent, but more the fact that they've got the telekinetics and all of that kind of stuff, and they literally just want to run the show,
Yeah.
pair off against their person. One of the children he's like twin flame, didn't live. They died at birth because it was just a complication during childbirth.
Yeah.
And he's the only one in the story that sort of like gets some human tendencies.
Yeah.
And he doesn't. So but the ones that are actively communicating, whatever, frightening, right?
Yeah,
Frightening.
weird and frightening and interesting all at the same time.
Yeah, and it was, I remember seeing the movie. I don't think the movie was that great, but the imagery,
Yeah.
frightening. These kids that just look like they want to kill you
Yeah.
and kill you hard. They don't just look like they've got some malice towards you.
Yes.
They're
Yeah.
happy to hurt you.
Yeah. You know
Then
what
I was,
it reminds me of? In my own searches of demonic children, changelings, and just evil fucking kids. You mentioned that the Nazis were trying to inseminate women to have these perfect Aryan children, and then these crazy ass kids in the village are born of what seems to be an immaculate conception. In my research, I come across the concept of a campion and a campion, sorry. And this is the offspring of demonic parents, usually an incubus or a succubus. And because now this is said in the Malleus Maleficarum, so fucking good on you, Hammer of the Witches, that incubus and succubus couldn't reproduce on their own, so they would do the deed. The succubus would have sex with a human male, store that sperm, that seed, go to an incubus, give it to the incubus would then corrupt that seed, and then he would inseminate a human female, and the offspring from that insemination would be a campion, which is half demon, half human child.
just remember the book series that I read about this in.
Yeah.
Sorry, it just came to me. I'm trying to think of the person. It just came to me.
Yeah. So, and campion is actually coming from the Latin to exchange, which is something that we liken to changelings, which is a more well-known myth in that fae folk come in and they swap healthy human children for their sickly fae children or sickly elderly disguised as babies to be raised by human parents.
Yes. We would indicate that we're actually got a fair bit of strength that they don't have if we're able to, which is, it's kind of nice to think that the fae aren't all powerful. Yeah. They need our earthly strength.
It was literally done to embolden the line and to bring that diversity into the fae line.
Yes, and we've all read about changelings in one, and that goes back actually to the cuckoos, because it's the cuckoos that do it, isn't it? That's why it's named after that.
Yes,
that
they push the eggs out of the nest and put one of their own in, or and then that bird that has that baby egg raises that chick. And then I'm pretty sure the cuckoos aren't the only ones to do it. There's a species.
No, I think I didn't go any further into that, but I'm pretty sure it's not quite common, but it is seen in the birds. I don't think there's many other
nature. Yeah,
I don't think there's many other animals that do it that I'm aware of. But okay, so then I'm thinking, all I started to think then was looking at these pictures and I go, I've got an image of scary young kids in my head that I can't to get rid of. And of course, I'm thinking of the Grady twins from The Shining.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Because, okay, they were supposed to be ghosts, and if anyone's read The Shining, you would know that the Grady twins actually are not twins; they're siblings.
Yeah.
And you will know that, or you don't actually have any reference to Danny actually seeing them at any point in time in The Shining. That was something that was just brought into the movie series. But I think it was a good ad because they're scary as.
They
And
are
we
scary.
had a life size version of them on a wall of our house for Halloween. And my son and his best mate decided to dress up as them, as that was their costume for this last year, just gone on Halloween.
Blue dresses and all. That was actually
Everything.
so cool.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
scare like we've got Damien from the Omen way back when. This either it's the Antichrist that's coming through as a young child, it's a demon,
Yes.
it's absolutely freaky. But what I will say is I actually found a historical reference where it was documented in a place called Woolpit, which is in England, of green children appearing. A brother and a sister were found. We're talking around about the 12th century. And they say here that it's perhaps during the reign of King Stephen, which I had to read because when I first saw that, I thought Stephen King.
Yep.
And I'm
Yep.
like, and what's Stephen King got to do with this back in the 12th century?
Yep.
Anyway, basically, this brother and sister were found out in the woods. They looked perfectly normal, a little bit sickly, but they looked perfectly normal, but their skin was green. And the only food that they would eat were broad beans, raw broad beans. And effectively, these villagers took them in, tried to, get them healthy. When they were baptized, that one of them died. Only the girl lived. The boy died and didn't make it through baptism. And when eventually, when the girl grew up and she was spoken to and asked about, where did you come from, what was going on, she explained that her and her brother had come from a land where the sun never shone and the light was like twilight. Now, what was interesting about this, I haven't got the details, I forgot to cut and paste that, but it
Yeah.
was 3 different historical texts of the time. They were referenced. So that this was actually supposed to be something that historically happened. Yes, it was the kind of story where they're talking about an urban myth, but it was documented in 3 separate occasions over the period of a couple of hundred years. They were talking about these green children of Woolpit. And I think that comes back to the stories we've had back to changelings, where we've had fairy folk somehow getting over there. And sometimes it can be on purpose, where a changeling is that, that we don't even know what happens to the human babies. There's horrible stories about what happens to the human babies that are taken when the fairies are dropped in as a changeling. But these are usually more stories of where the child has, the fairy children have gotten lost, that they've actually come through. And often the story is that they've followed bells. And when they've followed the sound of bells, they've come through a cave and then they've not been able to get back to the fairyland and they've been stuck in our land.
Yeah.
Like, horrible for the little green people, but an interesting story. And I wonder, you've got that, then you've got obviously little green men with aliens with these super big black eyes, and you're wondering, are we mixing stuff up? Like, I'm not sure. But the other interesting thing, just in talking about scary, scary pictures of kids, I came across a artwork called The Crying Boy. Now, I don't know if you've seen the artwork of The Crying Boy. It was a print that was painted by an Italian painter, Giovanni Bragolin, in 1911. Oh, no, he was born in 1911. This particular picture is of a creepy ass kid, right? A really creepy looking kid, eyes normal, but given off full on creepy vibes. What happened with this, which was weird, was there was a curse around the painting that if you bought a reproduction of the painting and hung it in your house, there was all of these instances of the house burning down, but the painting was the only thing that remained untouched. It was picked up by British tabloids about this whole curse that was going around with the crying boy. And then they went through all of the instances where a house had been found burnt down and this picture was the only thing that didn't get burnt. And they did all of this science study in it, and they said, oh, because they actually had proven instances where this was happening. And then they said, oh, it's because it was chemically treated in a certain way. The reproduction was chemically treated in a certain way. And then the attachment to the wall was of inferior quality. So when the fire went up, the backing would burn and it would fall face down on the ground. And that was what would protect the face of this particular image when it burned. But there were so many instances of, and one person actually bought the picture because he'd heard about the curse and he thought it was a load of crap. And his house burnt down. Like, he left and then he came back and his house had burnt down. And then he'd found that someone had removed the painting from the house. So when they went through the remains, they couldn't find the picture. And someone had removed it, and he found the removed, copy, and still blamed it on his house burning down. Really? That blew my mind. And if you look, like,
shit.
this weird ass shit. And I'm talking, it was 21st of October, 24th of October, 25th of October, November, all of the same year. It was like boom, boom, boom. Houses were burning down, and this picture was in it. Crazy. A firefighter that heard about it thought that it was a load of bullshit and it was just an urban legend until he was at a fire scene and everything's burnt down in this house, and he finds one of these paintings and he lifts it up and it's got this creepy ass kid on it and it's completely untouched.
If Supernatural has taught us anything, it has taught us that that painting is haunted as shit. It has some sort of attachment and it needs to be dealt with.
We need to salt it and burn it. Salt it, burn it. Come on, Dean. Come on, Sam. We need to salt it and burn this thing. I find it really interesting, and people listening would go, why are you talking about a curse on a painting when we're talking about black-eyed children? And I would say, Google the crying boy.
Yeah.
Have a look at the painting.
Yeah.
And you'll understand why I made the connection.
Yeah.
Because it's creepy. I don't know what Giovanni was thinking when he painted it. I have no idea.
Maybe he was seeing some creepy ass black-eyed children and needed to like get that shit on a canvas just to prove his sanity.
There's so many creepy ones. I came across another one of a painting that was, I can't remember what it was called, and it was a young boy, and next to the young boy was a doll, a girl doll that was like Annabelle kind of size. And the picture behind it was a door, but a glass door, and in the glass door you can see hands pressing against the glass door.
Yep.
And like, obviously he's trying to freak us out, right?
Yeah.
But the imagery, there was a lot of reported instances of where people had seen this picture and strange things would start happening in their home. And then when they looked back at the picture, the hands were in different positions on the window.
Yeah. Okay.
So what do we do, Tay? Salt it and burn it.
Move on. Go make a cup of tea now. Forget I saw that. But it was funny when you talk about the green kids and like the Fae children coming through, these portals and stuff like that into our world. It literally reminded me of that song from Spinal Tap, Stonehenge, where he's like, the little children of Stonehenge. But there's a lot of instances of just kids being creepy, and we're utilizing that factor for scare factor in our pop culture and in our art and all that sort of thing. But what's even scarier to me is that this changeling lore or mythology or these demonic children, something just moved. I don't know what it was.
I'm going to tell you, I'm cleaning my mirrors as soon as I get out of here. The Windex is coming out. I'm getting everything to print off.
And I was like,
this is creeping me out so much, but I'm feeling slightly.
What scares me about this whole mythology is not the fact that the actual, the children are actually fucking terrifying as well, but the fact that these concepts of demonic children, changelings, whatever, were used as valid reasonings to commit infanticide. So, which was absolutely rife in Ireland, superstitious Ireland, where a lot of the changeling myth and stuff occurs from. There was even one instance where a woman, 26-year-old woman, was accused of being a changeling because she would independently deliver her dressmaker deliveries around the town, and she would pass by this site, which was a known Fey fortress, like a Fey fort.
Yeah.
And it's in Tipperary, Ireland. And the site was like an earthen mound with these
I read it.
hill.
Yes.
I don't
Yes.
have the name in front of me, but in 1895, Bridget Clary was going out for a delivery. She was delivering some eggs to a cousin, and she had to go past this mound to get it. And she went past it all the time. And her husband had a real bee in his bonnet about her walking around town by herself doing these deliveries, being, successful, whatever.
Yeah.
Michael. But she come back one night and she was like, couldn't get warm. She was cold. She started coughing. Like, she'd been diagnosed with bronchitis. And which was fine. But then her husband didn't believe that it was her. For some reason, he decided that she was not his wife and that she was a fae, and had a fae doctor come and look at her. And then her cousin went to visit her the next morning, and she was being held down by 6 men who were trying to get her to drink this concoction of milk and bitter herbs to purge this changeling, or to get her to return. Anyway, she ends up recovering from her bronchitis, feeling fine, trying to do all of her normal stuff. She asks for a plain cup of milk, and her husband's like, she's a changeling. She's a changeling.
Yeah.
Goes off, absolutely beats her black and blue, and then lights her on fire with a piece of kindling from the fireplace, and she goes up in smoke because she's a changeling. And then 24 hours later, after that, he goes to this earthen mound and demands that the fairies return his wife. But who came for him? The police. The police fucking came for him because he just murdered his wife. He only got charged with manslaughter along with the 6 other men that were responsible for her negligent treatment. And then 15 years after the incident, moved to Canada. But it was a sensation event because it really highlighted the danger of superstition in Ireland.
I actually think I read this too.
Yeah.
That this earthen mound that they had thought to be like entrance to the fairy realm was actually a firing thing for tiles that hadn't been used for. I'm not sure if this was the exact instance, but in other places around Europe, they were saying these creations, because they weren't being used anymore, people didn't recognize the shape of them, were being said to be fairy creations when they were just abandoned firing areas where they fired tiles and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that terrible?
It's so terrible. I just found the name of the hill. I don't know if I'm gonna Kynoch.
Oof.
Yeah, it's Gaelic.
Yeah, we're gonna go.
The ASC, so the fair folk. So
how many bad stuff have we, like, humanity done under the guise of you're different, you're fey, you're this? Like, this we could have been like, not wanting to get serious on a light-hearted subject, but there are children that have been killed because the parents just didn't want them, or went from the misguided belief that they were either possessed, they were when they just had medical issues.
They were either premature and failure to thrive, or they had congenital disorders or disfigurations.
Yeah.
some of them it was like there was a thing where it was like, oh, the milk of 4 nursemaids couldn't satiate
Yes,
crying, and I'm like, that's a
yes,
colic to me. Like that's a colicky baby.
yes. It's not an issue on like you could put 25 bloody nursemaids there, or
Yeah,
if they've got a birth defect in their upper
yeah.
palate, they
Tough
can't
palate,
suckle.
tongue tied, they're gonna struggle to nurse. Like, but these things were not looked into. It was just, and and it was really prevalent in medieval Ireland too. So we're moving away from this reverence of folk people,
Yeah,
practices, medicines, whatever, into the Christiany fucking superstitious ages where the
yeah.
only explanation for foul doings or negative happenings was the devil, or some malevolent force. So of
Mm-mm.
course they're not going to their midwife or they're not going to their physicians to get
No.
these things looked at. They're just assuming that, oh, my baby's been swapped. Well, no, that's not the case. I mean, fuck me, at least the Spartans were honest about their infanticide. Oh, that
Yeah.
one's not good for war. Throw it in the pit, like what the fuck? So,
So what are we thinking about the black-eyed children? Are
well,
we
I mean,
thinking they're aliens? Are we thinking they're demons? Are we thinking they're reverence? What are we thinking? Or are we
you know
thinking they're
what I
just
actually
a
think?
creepy pasta creation that's grown legs?
It's probably a culmination of all of the above, mainly creepypasta, grown legs.
Yeah.
And our folklore and our mythology is evolving with us. We've seen that happen across human history. I also like to think it's kind of a funny little nod to mirror world people. Because like in Chinese folklore, they've got the mirror world people that come through from the other side. Um, and then we have that with the changelings coming through
Well,
the other.
I was getting when I actually went through an urban folklore dictionary just to
Yeah.
see all of the different ones. And I must admit, in terms of the energies that I was getting from the black-eyed children, I was getting similar kind of energy from when we've done stuff with shadow people,
Yes.
Hat Man,
Yes.
um, all of that kind of vibes was coming up. And I actually have some notes here, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but I'll bring it up now because it seems a little bit cyclical, these things.
Yeah.
There's something called the Dark Watches, which is something that spooks out Californian hikers and other places in America.
I actually got goosebumps when you said that. I don't know why.
I don't like the term Dark Watches
Yeah.
at all. And apparently, and they've been seen for 300 years. When you look up at the mountain, especially at sunset, there's these huge shadow-like figures that
Yeah.
have either got a hat or a cloak on that are seen. Then they've got this,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there was actually photographs of this,
Yeah.
and the photographs they're basically scientists telling us that it's a refraction of the light happening at certain points of time, that when the light comes through, the shadow can be magnified and all of these things can happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what I always love, is when they give us the science reason saying, no, this is what it is, the light's doing this. But if you don't buy that, this is what I'm also selling you. It's the fact that it's going back to that what was it called? Pareidolia. That's right, pareidolia, which
Yes.
was the psychological phenomenon that people see faces and they see
Yeah.
they want to see Jesus in the toast.
Yeah.
Effectively, they want to see that. So you're walking along, you see this shadow, and why has it got a hat on then, man? Like I can understand that I can sort of like get a figure that's got like a thing, but
Yeah.
a hat.
You know what it reminds me of with the shadow people and the negative entities, demonic presences and stuff, because in my experience of children, which I touched on in one of our previous podcasts, but
Yes, you have to
again.
go talk about that again, Tay.
So in my experience, when I was working in a nursing home, which are notorious for retracting all sorts of shit because it's a place of, moving.
Even to death.
Yeah. Vulnerability, death, can't sugarcoat it. That's what it is. I was on night shift one night, and you hear residents talking about seeing kids all the time and stuff like that. But you kind of take it with a grain of salt because a lot of them have a dementia or Alzheimer's, and not always the kids are nefarious in nature. But one night I was walking through doing the heat packs like we used to for our residents with aches and pains, and I looked over to the big hospital doors to my left, and they were closed, and in the windows I saw these child entities with hollowed out eyes, and it was like they were wanting me to let them in, and I knew they weren't children. Like, I knew they were not children. They weren't physical children wanting to be let in. They were spectral. And a lot of that and that's always stayed with me because that's fucking freaky. But a lot of the stuff that I've watched around, mediums with their experiences of shadow beings, children with their experiences of spirits and stuff, a lot of the time it is like these shadow demonic presences manipulating or taking the guise of children to be more trustworthy to who they're trying to get in on. And that I have a similar feel when you say black-eyed children. That's what I think of. I think of like shadow being maybe a more presence as opposed to like aliens and stuff like that. But obviously that fear of evil children stems right back in our psyche.
100%.
Used to
but what interests me though is there's not that much folklore specific to children that I could find.
Yeah.
I mean, I tried to uncover it because I really wanted there to be all of this ancient folklore. I didn't care where it came from.
Yeah.
There's some whacker stuff out there in terms of, Mothmen and all of these other kind of things that's out there. And I felt like when I was going through it all, it was almost like the supernatural episodes, just so many of them were, we were looking when you talk urban legends, you're talking about, the person who's got the people being high beam from behind them and they're trying to bump them off the road. And then you realize they're trying to warn you that you've got a hitchhiker in the back seat kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got a lot of that kind of stuff. But when I was trying to drill down to try and find, if we go back, can we find anything? I couldn't find anything. I've got to be honest.
There's a lot of like child presences, like ghost presences and stuff. And mainly even being like ill omens, like if you see them, something is going to happen. They're not necessarily the cause.
Yeah, so the harbinger of something,
Yeah, but then with the black-eyed children, it's evolved into this more malevolent sort of presence that snowballed. So it's in my experience, I would say it's probably more of that type of thing as opposed to like an alien or whatever.
Yeah, I'm thinking dark energy too, only because the vibe I get when you look at the Hat Man shadow people, the dark watchers, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
That gives me very much sleep paralysis demons vibes, which takes us way back to the first season.
Takes us we're looping.
Takes us right back there, and a lot of the things that are getting used to explain this. This doesn't happen around the black eye doesn't happen around sleep. You actually freaked me out with the story of that in your nursing
home. Yep.
I've got a recollection, and I don't know if it's just my overactive imagination now, but I've got a recollection of having something when I was time in hospitals when I was younger.
Yeah.
I have a recollection of seeing a child where a child shouldn't be, walking around the hospital and going, yeah, that's not right.
Oh.
It's having one of those, yeah, that's not right.
I'm getting
moments.
I'm getting the.
And I hadn't really remembered it until you were talking about it. And I could just I just sort of like went there and went. So if anyone rewatches this back, go look at my reaction when Tay's talking.
Yes.
Because something in me, I went all goose pimply and I went, oh my goodness, I sort of like remember something about that.
That's how I feel about the validation of them being more of a shadow force than a else.
Look, I'm loving
the goosebumps when I shouldn't be getting the goosebumps. Like I know,
I'm like loving the addition of the fact that they have to ask permission. I think anything that forces it's a level of rules of behavior, rules of conduct. I appreciate it. I don't think it's probably would make much of a frigging difference,
No.
to be honest. But I do like the concept. But I
Yeah.
suppose if enough of us believe that that's the case, I suppose you can enforce that, could create its own law, can't it?
Yeah.
That's how these things generate. But no, this has been a slightly creepy topic. I've got to say.
It's a creepy topic. And when you brought up the hag phenomena, I just thought about the incubus succubus phenomena, where the
It's just
people experience them sitting on their chests, and I'm like, that's just because they're trying to knock you up with their demon baby.
And now, why do I find it worse when I found that it's gone through this strange IVF process of being harvested? It just makes it somehow so
Like
much
a
worse.
demon turkey baster. That's gross.
Oh, thank you for that.
No worries, anytime.
So what we can basically say, science can't help us here.
No.
Apart from giving us some half-assed responses. I did find when I was looking at the Dark Watchers and I looked up again Hatman and I looked up Shadow People, I did find it that apparently Benadryl is the current reason as to why it's Benadryl.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you say to people who don't take Benadryl?
It's weird.
Fucking give me my straitjacket now. I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll go.
That shocked me because that's obviously something new that's coming up on the internet, because that didn't come up when we researched it, however many months ago. So I'm finding that interesting that now it comes up as being Benadryl's the most likely explanation. All of that science we had about going in through the sleep phases and all of that, no, don't worry about that. It's just Benadryl.
Just Benadryl.
Benadryl's, I'm sure that spiked their sales when people were like, ooh.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Experiencing sleep paralysis, you need a dose of Benadryl.
Yes, you didn't take the right dose. You went too light. Go a bit heavier and we'll knock you clean out.
Read the dosage guidelines before partaking in this product. Yeah. This product might not be for you. Please read through all these side effects and whatever the fuck else we need to say to not be liable for your hallucinogenic.
All of those things. Google said it. We didn't say it.
Yeah.
All right, I think that wraps it up.
I think it does.
I will say, talking about those Dark Watchers though, who do freak me out, look into them. They were actually John Steinbeck actually was so transfixed with the concept that it became almost like a family thing, that his son also got, locked into this concept because they both had experienced it. So it's in a lot of his writing works that he mentions these watchers, which is interesting.
Making a note.
Making a note.
What are we talking about next week? Our very last episode.
Yes, I know. And I'm sorry, everybody. You don't have to tune in if you don't want to. I'm having a rant. And I'm having a rant, and I don't know if Taylor's going to join me or not, or we're going to be finally butting heads. Yeah, it's going to be on. We're going to talk about political correctness and how I believe it is killing thought, that it's actually hamstringing us in a way that we've never been hamstrung before. And I've got my mates, Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Sigmund Freud, and Carl Jung all to back me up. I'm bringing the big boys in.
I need to fucking make a gang real quick. This gets ugly. Oh, shit. Oh, righto. Well, that's going to be interesting. I can't wait to hear where that goes. I feel like just off the bat, I don't think we'll be at that much of an odds.
We'll need to put a disclaimer at the start to say, look, please don't take us out of context.
Yeah.
If you're going to quote us, quote the whole sentence and don't take 3 words out of it, because that's half of the problem with political correctness anyway, that people throw out a sentence because of 1 word. Heaven forbid we should use context.
Yeah.
Don't get me started. I'm just saying we'll need to have a big disclaimer right across it saying this may offend, and that's fine. I don't really care if it offends people, but I would ask to be taken in complete context and not that anyone's going to do that, but I'm just saying. You never know. Might go
You
viral.
should know what podcast they're listening to by now. You should know what podcast you're listening to by now. If you don't, maybe go right back to the start and start again, because you might
You've
have,
missed some stuff.
missed some stuff along the way. Well, let's talk about a cat. As always, people, curiosity may have killed a few cats because the cat was, walking around the house one night and it just heard a little rapping on the door, and cats are like meow. So it went out the cat door and it saw a couple of black-eyed children. The black-eyed children just looked at it and they were like, "Please, cat, let us in." The cat's like, "There's not something right with you. I'm gonna go back inside." But before the cat could go back inside, it got grabbed by the black-eyed children, got a mad dose of radiation poisoning, and died. But then it came back to life because it's got 9 lives.
Wow, that went where I wasn't expecting it. I just thought the cat was going to be all arced up because we didn't mention that, but cats and animals seem to react to black-eyed children in a very negative way.
Yeah.
They can sense them straight away. So I'm sorry, I'm having to overrule you here. Fluffkins popped his head out the door and he sort of like went, nah, his fur went up, his tail started to
Yeah.
do his
Yeah.
swish back and forward, and he went back in and he stood guard on that door and made sure those black-eyed children didn't come through the little
Well,
doggy.
he did that after his dose of radiation poisoning. He's all like, "That was a bad idea to go out."
Oh, eat some coal. Eat some charcoal. It's good for him.
Yeah. Oh my God. Go and fucking deep cleanse. Get in the shower and scrub, Fluffkins. Get in the shower and scrub.
You'll be right, mate.
All
You're a resilient.
decontamination.
You're a resilient cat.
Sorry, Fluffkins. We love you.
Oh, that was good. I enjoyed that.
For the team, just saying. But there is no growth in ignorant bliss. So if we've learned anything here today, don't open the door full of black-eyed
Don't open the door.
Don't
Don't let them in.
Don't fuck around and find out, because you will. Oh, well.
There we go.
We will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.